right now. So, okay.
I'm very happy to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Kelly Motadel. She is the county's Chief Pediatric Officer in the Medical Care Services Department. And previously, she was the Chief Medical Officer at Vista Community Clinic, which is a federally qualified health center. She serves as the Medi-Cal Children's Advisor, serves on the Medi-Cal Children's Health Advisory Panel, as well as the American Academy of Pediatrics Border Strategy Team. So I'm really pleased to have Dr. Motadel here with us today, and there'll be time for some Q&A at the end too. So thank you.
Thank you, Deirdre. Good afternoon, everyone. I don't have to introduce myself. Deirdre just took care of that for me, so thank you. I see some familiar faces and some that I don't know, but hopefully what information I'm going to provide for you today will be useful for all on the call. So Jackie, whenever you're ready, you could pull up my slides.
Yes.
And so I'm going to be speaking. Oh, I saw it for a second and then it disappeared.
I know I did presenter mode and then it disappeared. So let me. Okay.
I'm going to be talking about screens and sleep. And so, as Jackie alluded to, there are different requirements for sleep. We're going to talk about that. But really, where these two entities intersect, reality, they are both a part of life. We are not getting away from either of those things, right? And so, as much as sleep is an important part of health, and we know that screens are not always beneficial, they are part of something we have to incorporate into our lives and our children, and teach our children how to do that responsibly as well. So we're going to talk about sweet dreams in a world of screens, because we do live in a world of screens. So you can go to the next slide. All right, so today I'm going to first cover a little bit about the importance of sleep. I mean, I think everyone here knows if you don't get a good night's sleep, you don't feel good, right? But it goes beyond that. And for children, it goes even a step beyond that, because really these are developing brains that need that sleep. Prevalence of screen use, it is everywhere, but what are the numbers really for our children and for adolescents, even for our youngest children? We'll talk about that. And then where do these two things intersect, and what is the impact of screens use on sleep health as a result? And hopefully I'll give you a few pointers as well of things that you can use to educate those that you interact with in your families, in your professions, etc., to help get people with these healthier habits that we can teach our kids. So next slide. All right, so Jackie just alluded to the 5210 Plus campaign, and Deirdre mentioned I used to work at Vista Community Clinic, and I did see patients there. I was chief medical officer, but also a general pediatrician, and I used that 5210 pamphlet all day long. These are just really easy talking points that parents can understand, which is great. And I was thrilled when we added that plus sign. And I love that we didn't try and just stick in another number, because as you'll see on the next slide in just a second, there is no one number that is the magic number for everyone. But we can talk about that this is another important healthy habit, and that it is an additional healthy habit that is important for our children. Next slide. All right, so how much sleep do kids need? So these standards that you're seeing, this graphic is pulled from the parent-facing website of American Academy of Pediatrics called healthychildren.org. It's a wonderful website for all sorts of resources that you might need. But this comes from American Academy of Pediatrics, but is also the recommendations if you were to go to American Academy of Sleep Medicine, right? So these are really the evidence-based numbers by age group, okay? It might be tempting to think sometimes kids don't need as much sleep. They tend to have a lot of energy during the day, whether they get a good night's sleep or not. It might seem, or get a little bit less than their regular sleep. But the reality is kids do need that regular bedtime routine to truly reach their maximum potential, to help with development. A few skipped hours here or there can make a big difference. This graph starts with babies about 4 months of age, so it skips those first few months of newborn period, but 12 to 16 hours in a 24-hour period. And I emphasize that because sometimes as we get older, or as kids get older, especially as you get to the other end of that graph with the teenagers, they'll have this mentality of, well, we'll just make up the sleep later, right? And that doesn't work so well. And as you can see with teens, even teens need 8 to 10 hours of sleep. And so that we've historically talked about needing 8 hours of sleep, that really doesn't apply to any kids, right? Even teens tend to need a little bit more than that. And so that's the reason why we have that snoozing plus sign instead of a specific number. Next slide. Okay, so what happens when you don't get enough sleep? I think everyone here has had that experience and you feel lousy, right? Hopefully you haven't had to pull too many all-nighters in your life where you're not getting any sleep, but even just when you don't get as much sleep as you want, you don't feel well in that moment. And so kids, same thing. In that moment, in that day that they maybe don't get a great night's sleep, they don't feel well. They might be a little bit more irritable that next day. They might have more trouble academically or with memory, just behaviors in general, a little bit off from what they usually are. But that's just, in that moment. And if we look at AAP estimates, about 25 to 50% of younger children and about 40% of adolescents do have some sort of sleep problem. Okay, so this is an issue. This is a problem for our youth. Quality sleep is actually evidenced as a stress buster to combat ACEs. So that just tells you the power that sleep can have, right? Poor sleep leading to sort of these difficult behaviors, but quality sleep can really help in the long run in so many other ways. Even beyond that one day of poor sleep, if you have someone with getting chronically poor sleep or having sleep problems, like that large population I mentioned, these are other conditions that can end up resulting, right? So we see a tie-in with mental health, with anxiety and depression numbers increasing, particularly amongst adolescents, including suicidal ideation. We see more difficulty in forming social relationships, leading to peer conflict. We see changes in academic performance, and unfortunately, we see higher use of substances as well, often to combat the feelings of the poor feelings that result from lack of sleep, but also just there's an independent sort of link or association that is seen. So in addition, these effects can end up being sort of a vicious cycle. So you have a teenager who's not getting enough sleep, who develops some depressive symptoms. Depression onto itself can then lead to additional sleep problems, right? And so this can become sort of a vicious cycle, these emotional effects that you see as well. Next slide. In addition, there are physical organic complaints, right, that people end up having as a result of poor sleep. Many of us will have a headache the next day. Your immune system, you're a little bit more likely to get sick if you've had insufficient sleep, especially more chronically. Think about that time maybe back in college where at the end of exam week where you were pulling those all-nighters or getting very little sleep, and then you finally got to Christmas break and you got sick. That wasn't a coincidence. Yes, there's more viruses in the winter, but also you were sleep deprived. You'd just gone through a period of sleep deprivation, most likely, or at least insufficient sleep. And as a result, we're a little bit more compromised in your immune system. There also can be an increase in motor vehicle accidents or e-bike accidents. We know even younger kids are now on motorized vehicles, these e-bikes, right, around town, being sleep deprived and trying to drive a motorized vehicle of any type is set up for accidents as well. There are increase in sports injuries. Oftentimes, lack of focus in the games or in the practices can lead to increased injuries, but also their bodies are in a little bit of a compromised state as well with insufficient sleep. Then we also see weight gain with adolescents who have had insufficient sleep chronically. There's actual studies that have shown increased fat mass. This is believed to be because there's increased amounts of eating during that time. But in addition, just the way our bodies respond when we are sleep deprived, we tend to retain more of that fat mass as well. So when we look further down the road, these are all things that sort of are, again, happening in the moment of sleep deprivation. But if this is more of a chronic problem, we see into adulthood, there are higher risk for many cardiovascular events, including obesity, diabetes, and high blood pressure, unfortunately. All right, we can go to the next slide. So what amount of screen time is okay? How much screen are our kids using? So that was sleep. Now we're going to switch gears and talk about screens, and then we'll put it together. So screens, it's sad to say, I actually had to create some slides for screens in infants, right? And so when we think about screen time at bedtime, I know my first image is of that teenager, probably my son, trying to sneak his phone into his bedroom, right? Being on the phone late at night with the screen in front of their face. But unfortunately, this is an issue all the way down to our babies. And so less than 2 years of age, we have less information. We have less evidence, but we do have evidence that there is harm that exists, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. We know that adult interaction during screen time can help minimize some of that harm, but we don't have a ton of evidence of actual benefits of screen time in that age group. If you ask parents, about 50% of parents will endorse the belief that watching TV helps their infant or toddler or even preschool wind down at night, but we do not have scientific evidence to support those beliefs. 36% of young children have at least one screen media device in their bedroom. That could be a TV, that could be an iPad, but 36% of kids before they hit school age have a screen media device in their bedroom. Infants that are exposed to screen media in the evening hours also show significantly shorter nighttime sleep duration. So even if it's not just keeping them awake, their sleep duration is impacted as young as infancy if screens are used in the evening hours. Next slide. So we recommend less than 60 minutes, 60 minutes is a max per day for 2 to 5-year-olds. So these are your toddler preschool age. We talk about on our 5210 campaign, 2 hours of recreational screen time, but really it's even lower for the younger kids. We really shouldn't be, we should be recommending even less time, and 60 minutes or less for that age group. When you look at screen media use, in younger ages, 4 years of age, it predicts sleep problems later. So 4-year-olds who have a higher use of screen, by the time they turn 6, they're having more issues with sleep duration. Screen media use at 6 predicts sleep at 8, and so on. So these problems can be cumulative, starting as early as toddlers and infancy. Next slide. All right, let's look at that next age group. That'd be the school age kids. And on average, children 6 to 12 years of age spend about 4 to 6 hours a day on screen. So just a little bit more than we would like them to be, right? But that's not all recreational, because now they're in school, right? And so we know a lot of schools use iPads and use screen-based learning. But on average, they are still spending about 3.5 hours a day of recreational screen time on screens for recreational purposes. By the age of 8, about 25% of them have their own phone. So once they have that phone, it's even harder to sort of pull them away from the screens. So being able to push that off as long as possible definitely helps create healthier habits in that age group. If we go to the next slide, we look at elementary aged and tweens. So again, that 6 to 12-year-old age group, almost 50% of them have a screen media device in their bedroom. So that's up about 10, 15% from where the toddlers were. 60% of this age group report that they do use the device in the hour prior to bedtime. And that's going to become important, that statistic, later as we talk about the impact of screens on sleep. Additionally, on the other end of the sleep cycle, they're using it first thing in the morning too. 55% report using their screens within an hour of waking up as well. So this is, again, something that is in these kids' life, and we have to help make them use it in a healthy way. Next slide. All right, teenagers, right? So the adolescents, by the time they get to adolescence, we are seeing that they're using screens up to 7 to 9 hours a day. If you think back to that other slide from the beginning, this is probably more or about as much sleep as they are getting, right? So about 50%, about half, 1 to 1 hours of sleep to screen, right? That's kind of scary. 80% admit to using at least to exceeding the 2-hour-a-day limit. We know that some of that 7 to 9 hours is not recreational, but a lot of it is. And at this age group, they're also using it more for social media and not just passive watching, right? So it's more interactive, whether it be video games or whether it be social media. This is more interactive, and that's an important characteristic as well when it comes to talking about how it impacts sleep. And we'll talk about that. 57% have at least one screen device in their bedroom, so a little bit higher from that last age group, and 60% report using it within 30 minutes of bedtime. So not even like, they didn't even bother asking the teens within an hour, right? Like even right before bed, 60% have their screen on in front of them. So next slide. All right, so let's talk about that intersection. What is screens and sleep? What do they have to do with each other? What is it? How are they involved with each other, right? So only about 1 in 4 adolescents get that minimum 8 hours of sleep per night. So our youth, our adolescents are getting insufficient sleep. They are sleep deprived. Just, it is what it is, right? The large majority are not getting enough sleep per night. 30% of sleep problems in adolescents can be tied back to this electronic media use. So we just talked about, they're looking at it right before they go to bed. They're spending lots and lots of hours on screens every day. So about 30% of the adolescent sleep, lack of adolescent sleep, can be attributed to electronic media use. So the good news here is this is something that we can correct, right? Like, this is something that where we can intervene. We know what we can do to help with some of the sleep hygiene issues that our teens have. How easy that is a different story, but at least we can identify something that's correctable. Adolescents who used a screen within an hour before bed were twice as likely to have sleep problems as their counterparts who did not. Next slide. Okay, so what impact do screens have on sleep? Oh, it's more than just, it keeps you up later. Yes, that's part of it. You're going to have a shorter sleep duration if they're staying on their phones into the night, right? They're just going to have less time to sleep. So that insufficient sleep duration can really be tied back to that. But it actually delays sleep onset as well. So even once they put their phones away, it's going to be harder for them to initiate sleep. We'll talk about why in a minute. It actually also has been noted that they have more nighttime awakenings if they've been on their phone closer to bedtime as well. The sleep quality is not as good. In particular, they have less REM sleep, or they have a delayed onset of the REM part of the sleep cycle, and of course results in daytime sleepiness as well. The relevance there, beyond just the fact that they're sleepy, is that then they're more likely to take a nap, which will also disrupt their sleep patterns and might result in additional reasons why they have trouble falling asleep at night. Next slide. All right, so why do screens impact all of those things that we just talked about on the prior slide? Largely, it is this blue light exposure. I think somebody even mentioned it already in the meeting today, that this blue light exposure, it's interfering with, in particular, your melatonin production. So it suppresses that hormone that tells your body it's time to sleep, that melatonin. It also interferes with the circadian rhythm. So your body's sort of ability to know when it's time to sleep. So it can delay that sleep initiation. So your brain's not turning off. Your brain doesn't know to turn off because the melatonin levels are not where they need to be. So your brain doesn't get that it's bedtime. It doesn't get that it's time to sleep. Then you're not getting as good a sleep. And then you're having more difficulty waking in the morning, because your body doesn't know it's time to wake up because it hasn't gotten sufficient sleep. So this is this sort of vicious cycle that can result. Of course, it displaces time, it creates people staying up later. But then the other component is it really increases your arousal and your alertness. So you having that interactive content that we talked about with teenagers, the reason that's more impactful is that interactive content actually increases your cortisol. When your cortisol is up, your body is more in tune. Okay, it is not ready, getting itself ready to go to bed. It is not calming. Cortisol is sort of the opposite of that. So it increases this sense of arousal. In addition, your brain is trying to focus on something, is trying to pay attention to something. It's staying more alert for that reason as well. So those teenage activities of that interactive content can really have an even more significant impact on the ability to fall asleep later and the quality of the sleep that those kids are getting later as well. So what can we do? Next slide. So a lot of this goes back to the basics of what we've always known, some of the stuff that we've always known, which is really we need to have a balanced life of rest and play, right? So we need kids to have sort of other activities so that they're not using their screens all day long, but also by not using their screens during the day, they'll be less likely to use their screens at night. So arranging these balanced schedules of rest and play is important, starting at a very young age, and then keeping that routine. Regular bedtime routines are important. This means you don't get to stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning just because it's a Friday night, right? Like that bedtime routine has to stay consistent as much as possible. Regular bedtimes, a bedtime routine. So here's what happens the hour before you go to bed. We're going to start by brushing our teeth or getting a bath, and then we're going to do some reading, and then maybe we have our prayers. Whatever it is for that child and that family, there needs to be a routine that is consistent, that's to like sort of teeing your body up, teeing your brain up to knowing that it's time to go to sleep. And in that hour prior, there should be no screen. In addition, clear screens from the bedroom. That is just temptation waiting to happen. It also sort of doesn't let your body and your brain know that that is an area for sleep, right? So it's particularly no screens in the bed. Our sort of muscle memory needs to know that the beds are for sleeping. It's not for screens. So make those areas a no screen day, a no screen zone day and night. Next slide. Turn off all screens 60 to 90 minutes prior to bedtime. I have trouble with that. I know my kids have trouble with that. This is much easier said than done, but this is the science. This is really the evidence-based science that we know can keep screens from interfering with sleep efficiency and sleep quality. We can put parental controls on devices or on apps to help make that happen so that screens are not able to be used. My kids hate that, but they have those on their screens. So all of a sudden, that doesn't work anymore because we have that parental control that shuts the devices off about an hour before bedtime. It is a habit that can be taught early, and then it becomes a habit, right? And that will help set them up for healthier habits as adults as well, because what the other thing we can do is model this good behavior ourselves, right? And so our kids are watching. We have to have the right behavior. They have to see us not using our beds at screen time, not being on our screen 7 to 9 hours a day like the teenagers are doing, right? By showing them that model behavior, showing them that balance between rest and play in our own lives, they will be watching that and they will hopefully develop some similar habits. Next slide. So in summary, we know that there's an increased use of digital devices across children, across all ages of children, and they're often exceeding our recommendation of 1 to 2 hours of screen time, recreational screen time per day. There is an excessive use of screen time at night, and this does have real consequences, both physically and behaviorally, emotionally, both and in youth as well as into their adulthood. We need that. Balancing the screen use and sleep is essential. As I said from the beginning, screens aren't going away, so we have to find a balance. We have to find out how to help them use it responsibly and in a healthy way. And that means getting enough sleep, that 8 to 14 hours, depending on the age group, and then less than 2 hours of recreational screen time a day. And we need to model that behavior both in our screen use and in our sleep hygiene. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see some of the resources that I used if you want to read up on this a little bit more on your own. And on the last slide, I have my contact information for anyone who has questions or would like to reach out for any reason. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Motadel. I didn't have this problem when my kids were little because they didn't have smartphones available. But now that I have 2 grandchildren under the age of 2, this is all kind of becoming, top of mind and important again. So it's really good information, understanding the why, but also, some tips for making it better, making the environment better. I'm just curious where they found the young people to compare to, the ones that didn't use their screens versus the ones that did, but I'm sure they're out there somewhere. So now's the time. I know you do need to leave in just a few minutes. So if anyone has any questions for Dr. Motadel before we move to our discussion time with people from schools who see the result of some of that during the day, please go ahead and ask a question.
I have a question. I would like to, well, I guess maybe it's not a question. I would like to share your presentation with my Wednesday morning group that meets at school. How would you feel about sharing your presentation?
Absolutely. Jackie has my permission. I think she recorded it, but also is going to share the slides with everyone in a PDF format later. If you need the actual PowerPoint, just reach out to me and I can send that to you as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. And just so you know, Dr. Motadel, Bonnie Beckman, part of the COI Community Council, is in Julian. So I assume that that's the community, the school community you'll be sharing this with, Bonnie.
Yes, we have Wednesday mornings coffee and conversation with some of the with Pathways and some of the parents.
Thank you for doing that. And I encourage anyone that, you know, has kind of an audience that might be interested in this information, because we hear a lot about, you know, kids are always on their screens, but, you know, what's some of the data and what are some tips to deal with that? Other questions? I just wonder, Dr. Motadel, if you're talking with anyone or hearing anything about kind of the newer requirement for schools to set policy related to screen time during a
Yeah, I
school
mean,
day.
yeah, I think, schools are really trying to navigate that. That is a hard thing, and is whether good or bad, schools are really kind of left to do what's best for their communities. I think the hard thing in that is it's harder to enforce, or harder to get to the point where you're saying no screens on, or no phones on campus, or no digital devices on campus other than the school authorized ones. Um, However, I will say the schools that my kids are at, that is their policy. So they have to put it away at the beginning of the day, and they cannot take it out until after the school hour. They don't make them lock it up. They don't, have a place. I know some schools go to that point. So they have it tucked away in their backpack, so they have access to it right after school. But I think, schools are probably in some ways, I can't speak for schools, but it feels like it is a thing that teachers in particular that I've spoken with are very grateful for having, a backing to not have that be such a distraction in class. And we do know if there isn't a policy in place like that, that there is a lot up to 2 to 3 hours of recreational screen use during the school day otherwise. So
2 to 3 hours. Yeah, I
yeah,
see a question, Elena.
yeah, Elena.
Hi. Yeah, a question and a comment. So, I am a teacher, and I do appreciate the fact that the state of California has started to move in the direction of, they've asked us to make policies. We obviously, high school, the kids are still allowed to have their phones with them, so we do still have some use, very little during class, but it's still happening. But my question is about really, I just heard that Australia outlawed social media for children under 16, I think, 16 and under. And I'm just super curious about, I know that we hear about other countries I think it's China that doesn't allow students to use social media, or they have very educational programs. I'm just really curious, how you see that direction moving. I think people are listening to the research, and obviously Australia, which is much closer to the United States in terms of our philosophy, has really moved in that direction. So I'm curious about the international implications of all of this, and what's going on with that. So
Yeah, you're right. I did read the same thing, and I do think there's going to be more and more movement towards trying to restrict social media use until later adolescence. I think it's a hard thing to do. I know that teenagers are very resourceful and find ways around some of these limits. So I'm not quite sure how it will be fully enforced. But just like we know teenagers find ways to get cigarettes and alcohol, this will be something that I think, teenagers will find a way around if they want to, but also teenagers also do pay attention to and want to do what's best for them themselves a lot of times. So those who are not looking for ways to take higher risks, those who do stay responsible, I think having these policies in place, having this legislation in place does send them the message. And there is more and more data, as you mentioned, coming out all the time about the risks of social media. I mean, that's a talk unto itself, but the risks of social media in the developing brain. And so until, they reach an age typically around 16 or 17 where they can really distinguish what is helpful material versus harmful material, I do think it's a wise move.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you. And you're right. It's kind of like there's the device, there's the screen, but then there's what's on the screen.
Yes.
And so both important factors to consider for sure.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
just really quick anecdotally, my sister's a school psychologist, and she's had several students admitted to the hospital because of phone limitations. And I just had a student run away from home for 5 days because her parents were trying to limit her phone use. So that decision making is not there. It's scary, really scary.
Which shows the importance of setting the expectations earlier in life, because it is so hard to take something away once someone is used to using it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So starting in elementary school rather than high school is a
Yeah,
far
and
better way to go.
I think it, you know, speaks to that fact of sort of screens are around and having to develop responsible habits around it as opposed to pretending they don't exist or trying to get rid of them altogether. I think it's a balance that we have to reach, and that's probably true of social media as well. So delaying it, I think, is important, but teaching kids how to use it responsibly will probably be an important factor as well.
And I see Sharon, I feel like we're kind of moving into the discussion area, which is just fine. So Dr. Motadel, whenever you need to leave, please do. But I want to mention Elena is with Crawford High School and San Diego Unified. I think you mentioned that, or at least in the chat. Sharon, I see that you have a comment in the chat. If you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Deidre. My name is Sharon. Oh, I have really bad Wi-Fi. That's why kids can't use their social media in my office. I work for San Diego Unified. My name is Sharon Rubalcava. I'm working now as in capacity as a school counselor. I'm here at La Jolla High School, but I've been a vice principal as well as a program manager for counseling and guidance for the San Diego Unified District. But what I put in the comment was my brother lives in Montana, and my nieces, when we went out there in 2023 for graduation, they were talking about the ban in Montana of TikTok. And so I just kind of looked into it, and it's still, there's a Senate, or there's a bill stating that they cannot, but it's in the courts because people are suing for the use of TikTok. So that's just an interesting aspect of how other states may be utilizing. But my nieces were definitely afraid of the thought of using TikTok. And I think that was a parental strategy from my brother and his wife. But yeah, so is it okay, Deirdre, if I just okay.
Please.
So the questions, we've always had a policy, well, for many, many, many years in San Diego Unified, we've had a policy of no cell phone use. The thing is that do teachers utilize it or use it for any backing? And as it became more public, that's when we were seeing more and more teachers banning phones in their classrooms. So what Elena had said is the high school, we don't take them. But what some teachers do is they'll put them, they have these like shoe holders that they'll put the phones. Some teachers will use that to put the kids will put their phones. And that's how some teachers will take attendance. Part of the problem is that some teachers do it, some teachers don't. And so there's been a lot of inconsistencies that we have seen. Our kids also utilize their social media on their devices. So whether we take their phone away or not, it doesn't matter to them. And they get to see the phones during lunch, passing periods, and all that fun stuff. I've had parents ask for help. And so that's when I gave them the strategy of the parental controls. But our kids come to school late. Like I said, we're in La Jolla High School, and it's really congested and hard to get here regardless. But school starts at 8:35. And we still have a tendency of kids coming late every single day. And they'll say, because they are staying up late doing their homework, which happens to be on the computer. So, it's kind of it's a hard situation to get around when the actual apparatus that we utilize for them to learn is online and on the computer. So only one student have I had say that they have a really, really hard time getting to sleep. And so that's when we discuss the routine. And I'm not even joking about counting sheep like that. If you just start counting in your head, that will help you fall asleep. So anyways, I'm here for questions. If you want more comments, I'll let Elena talk too, because I know I'm not the only person here.
Thank you, Sharon. No, that's a good perspective. And we specifically asked some folks from Chula Vista Elementary School District here as well, because, I know that you and Ellen are both at high schools. And so, talking about maybe something from a younger child's perspective, or how this is playing out in the classroom. I know Heather is on, and Song is also here, who I believe, Song, you work in the early childhood realm. So please, any comments or questions or perceptions you'd like to share?
Go ahead,
Um,
Mom. You want to go ahead and start?
you can start, Heather, and then I just have a little something I can add.
Yeah, so I'm Heather Cruz. I'm the Director of Attendance, Wellness, and Student Supports here at the Chula Vista Elementary School District. So we serve typically TK through sixth grade, so they are the younger students. And so one of the things in my role is that I oversee our SARB board, so our School Attendance Review Board. And so we bring families in that are having a really hard time getting their students to attend on a regular basis. And so I get to hear a lot of those stories. And one of the questions that we do ask is, what does your bedtime routine look like? And as you can imagine, I'm not sure that they are 100% truthful when they are presenting it, because nobody really wants to be judged. But we do, sometimes they will talk about it, and they will say that their bedtime is essentially the time that they get off of their device. And so we talk about how they need that time to wind down. And so recommending at least an hour ahead of time. And then we get some of the same problems that others have mentioned, where it's like, okay, well, we say to get off of it, but then we go back and see them on it, and so I do love the idea that Dr. Motadel said, that even if, especially for the older kids, like if it'd be best to not have the device in the room, but if you are going to allow them, that the bed is a no device zone. I really like that. And then if you have your door open, it's kind of easy to see whether or not they are, or if they have their door open, you can see that. So we definitely see a problem with it. I also think that what I hear from families is the parents are tired in the morning. And so, especially for our younger kids, they rely on their parents to get them to school. And so the parent will say, I admit it's my fault, but I work late, or I'm up late, or, whatever it is. And they're like, and so I just don't get up in time. So, that's a tough one. It's like, we're not just educating, trying to get the students to change their habits, but we really need the adults to change their habits as well. And I'm sitting here with my eyes watering a little bit, going, oh my gosh, I didn't get enough sleep last night. And so I know I'm guilty of it as well. A few additional thoughts is that we see this cycle happen too, where the students stay up late, or the family stays up late, and so then they're not ready to get to school on time, and then they don't want to be hassled in the front office, and so then they just keep their kids home. And so that's something we're really working with our front office staff, and I will tell the parents flat out, I'd rather have you there late than not have you there at all. But we also are working with our front office staff to say, how are you welcoming students, whether they're late every single day? A lot of times it's not their fault. And so we need to welcome them with open arms. So working on that as well. And just a final story, when I was helping out a school, I was there for about a month, and the principal, there was a student that had some behavior challenges, because I think we are seeing behavior challenges as a result of this. She said, yeah, I had him in my office last week because he got in trouble on the playground for, not playing correctly. And she just put him in the office for a minute while she was going to get something, and she came back and he was asleep, and she's like, and so I let him sleep, and he slept for over 2 hours. And so we know that this is what we have happening in our schools. And so it's like he was dysregulated. We know that. And so she's like, I just let him sleep just to have that time. So those are just some of the stories that we have coming to us.
Oh, Heather, yeah, you have a wide variety of experience working with a lot of schools. And
Yeah.
yeah, I put in the chat, poor tired kids. They would sleep for
Right.
2 hours in the office. My gosh.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
yeah, I think, yeah, like you said, it gets into that cycle, or like Dr. Motadel said, where, and sometimes you just have to figure out a way off that wheel.
Right, exactly. So we have Song here, who is one of our early childhood education specialists. So go ahead, Song, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Song Wagenka. Probably the hardest name you'll ever hear. And yeah, I've been in early ed for the past 10 plus years. And so primarily a TK teacher, but this presentation was like left me thinking, wow, like the early years, like Dr. Motadel spoke to, like the earlier we start with the parental controls and the habits, the better. So I'm in that role of like catching them at preschool, even in this position that I'm in. And so we have like parent meetings, our PAC meetings. And so it really made me think about this topic as one of the topics to present to our parents, to educate them on the importance of sleep health and how it starts now, because I know Heather and I both have older kids and we've talked about these things before, and it gets harder when they're older. You try to start new rules at this age, it's not going to work. So it's really, really important to start them preschool, the ideal age to just start it and continue with it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. And please feel free to use those 5210 plus materials related to sleep that Jackie put in the chat. That would be
Yes, I downloaded those already. Thank you.
wonderful, wonderful. All right, so I know that we have some people from other schools. I see Borrego Springs is in the room. I see two or three people. Oh, three people. Okay, I see Catherine and Billy, and I'm Catherine. If you'd like to introduce your group.
Yes, ma'am. So we're here from Borrego Springs. I'm Catherine. We have Billy over here and Andrea back here. Billy and Andrea are our community school coordinators, and I am part of our community school team. I've also worked in our food service department, and I also submit grants on behalf of the school district, among other projects that we have going on here. So just based on my observations and the variety of roles I've been in and the campuses that we all three get to observe on a daily basis, because we are such a small school district. The child that was sleeping for 2 hours, sadly, that's not an uncommon occurrence when we have little sent to the office and maybe complaining of a tummy ache. They're given, access to the nurse's room to lay down, and they go back in and check on them and they're just sound asleep. Even up here at the high school and middle school, we still see that happening here as well. I know we have a lot of students that are sleep deprived for a variety of reasons. Last school year, we did implement a yonder pouch, no cell phones on campus during the school day for middle and high school students, to a pretty significant degree of success. So I'm going to step back and have Billy and Andrea address some of the situations that they're aware of.
Well, I do stand out for the high school kids when they come out of campus in the morning, pass out the yonder pouches to them. And about 95% of them come through the gate half awake. And most of them looking like they just rolled out of bed. And they do complain frequently about how tired they are throughout the day. And there's kids taking naps in the library and in the classroom. So they're definitely having an issue with it. But I also see some of the stuff on their social media where they're posting stuff at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning So we know they are up using those devices. And the yonder pouches have actually been very good for us out here. The kids put them in their pouch in the morning, we secure them, and then we don't unlock them until the end of the day. And at first we had a lot of pushback both from the students and from the parents. So we conducted a parent meeting before we rolled them out and answered questions. And the parents became more comfortable with the idea. The students at the start, first couple months, were very adamant about not liking them. Now we've had a little bit of change of attitude towards them. Some of the kids are actually appreciative of them because they are seeing they're getting more work done in their classroom. And their grades are improving. It's really cut down on our fights on campus because we don't have keyboard warriors sending messages to their classmates and then going out and meeting on a trip to the bathroom or at lunch when they see each other face to face. And among our middle school, we've had a problem for several years now of the young ladies filming each other in the bathroom and distributing those items and using it as a bullying tactic. And obviously with the cameras being out of their hands during the day, that issue has completely gone away the last 2 years that we've had it. So we've had a lot of positive feedback from the teachers. They let me know that the kids are actually paying more attention to what's going on in class, working on their schoolwork. Prior to getting those patches, I would walk around to the different classrooms and at least 90% of the kids were holding their phone behind their laptop, their Chromebook, and playing on their phone and not doing their work. So I think, one, we need to educate the parents, and if we can use that slide, that's going to be fantastic because we'll present it at one of our parent meetings. So hopefully they will take some steps as well. But I do believe taking away the phones has been a great benefit for our students out here.
And Andrea also happens to be the mom of 3 littles, so she gets that experience, as well as both Billy and Andrea do home visits. And I think sometimes for chronic absenteeism, it does definitely have to do with sleep deprivation, and then what was addressed earlier, like how they're received in the office if they do show up late. So do you want to speak to any of that, Andrea?
I mean, I just think, like Kathy mentioned, at the elementary is where I'm mostly at, and kids are very honest at that age. So they'll tell you, yeah, my mom went to sleep and I stayed on my tablet till 11 o'clock at night. And so we sometimes it's our own staff. So I'll go in there and go, hey, your kid was in here taking a nap and he mentioned that you went to sleep and he was on the tablet till 11 o'clock. Oh yeah, I should start taking it away. And I'm like, yeah, you should. Because, they come in and they're tired and, they're sent, like Kathy said, they use the excuse of my stomach hurts or I have a headache or, and all they really want is just to lay in the nurse's office. And, we let them sleep because it's really not their fault, they're kids, but, at that age. But I think it is important to set those boundaries. I mean, we have the yonder pouches here for high school for during the school day, but I think that educating the parents about what they can do at home is also something that we need to work on.
Yeah, thank you so much for the information from Borrego Springs. I remember speaking with Catherine about this probably a year ago for the first time. And I think you started instituting the yonder pouches last school year. And one of the comments really stuck with me because you said that kids would come out, without phones, out at the end of the day, ready to pick up their phones, and it was noisy and kids were talking, and then they'd get their phones back and it would just quiet right down as kids weren't talking anymore. They were just on their phones. And I get that they hadn't been on their phones all day, but if you look around in most crowd settings, people aren't talking, they're on their phones, they're not interacting, they're not engaging. So I think at school, that's part of what school's for, right? It's for kids to have those social interactions. So, not having your phone all day. now there's nothing else to do but engage with your fellow classmates and teachers. So, you know, that is definitely a good move. Is there anything else more that anyone wanted to say from Borrego Springs? I wasn't shutting you down.
No worries.
No, I would just say that it is nice hearing the campus is noisy again and the kids are learning to talk to each other. But one thing I've noticed when I released the pouches at the end of the day, for the first few months, the kids would literally sprint when the bell rang to where I was standing. And now I'm standing, I would only be out there for about 5-6 minutes releasing the pouches. Now I have kids that are coming up 15 minutes after the bell rang. No one's running over anymore. And they're not in a big hurry to get there and open it up because previously they would get them and they'd go to the quad right next to where we release them. And everybody would sit down and start checking everything they had during the day. But now a lot of them get their phone at the end of the day. They're not rushing to come get it. And then they just put it back in their backpack and walk off talking with their friends. So it's been very encouraging.
That is a really great comment. I don't know if anyone here, well, I know that some of us were at the Live Well Advance in School Summit last month. And at the end of the day, there was a leadership panel and the superintendent from Oceanside Unified was in on the leadership panel. And she said some of those same exact things, that the students appreciated the fact that none of the students could have their phones. So they really didn't feel like they were missing anything during the day. So we were going to have a representative from that district here, but I don't believe she was able to make it. But they are having really good success and positive response. You know, I'm sure not 100% across the board or maybe right away, but it's really working out well for them as well. And I see Delphina, you have your hand up.
Bueno, espero que me puedan escuchar porque estoy aquí en el hospital con mi hijo por una cita médica. Pero quería dar mi comentario. Creo que también sí los padres hemos tenido la culpa, porque desde muy temprana edad yo he visto niños
Responsible because I've seen 2 or 3 year olds interacting with cell phones or smartphones, and this becomes a habit from a very, very early age. I have an adolescent, and we did not buy him a cell immediately because mainly because it was costly, but also because we didn't really want him to have it. So I think this works. So the more you control this at an early age, prevent them from acquiring this as a normal habit, because sometimes as parents, we feel so good because our young kids can use a cell phone or smartphone, and we brag about it. Oh, my 3-4 year old can use this or that, and you know, but that's not good for them. So and you know, these devices also act as babysitters, and children, instead of playing with each other, they're playing with the screens. And a lot of times you see kids under kids strollers, and they have a device, and that's, I don't know when that started, but parents play a key role in this. And giving information to the parents is important. Teaching parents how this affects younger brains, how this can prevent their brains from developing appropriately is important. Um, Especially moms, because we also, as moms, are always in front of our phones. We don't really interact with our surroundings as we used to. So I think that you know, the more the longer you can put off buying a smartphone to your kid, the better, I think. I don't know what would be the right time. And I would like to ask this. I don't know. should we say, what would be age appropriate for a
That's a
kid to
really,
have a phone?
yeah, that's a really good question, Delphina. And at the Smartphones in School workshop that we held in April, we had some researchers and a child psychologist or psychiatrist there. And what they said is that, you know, while it may be important for safety to have a child have a phone, either whether it's a app, you know, like one of those watches or a flip phone so that they can make a phone call and maybe even text, that they should not have a smartphone until they're driving. That there's really no reason for them to have a smartphone until they're driving, which is for most kids 16. And so, you know, maybe they're not going to get their license at 16, but that might be a good age. And so that, and again, it depends on the young person, you know, how responsible they are, how mature they are. But that doesn't mean they can't have a device to call if they need help, but it's all those apps and social media and that kind of thing that they don't necessarily need access to until that age. So that was just their advice. And so, yes, I think the parent education for sure, and that's why the 5210 plus materials were created, was for people who work with parents and young people to have some, you know, very clear, simple information. And Dr. Motadel's presentation, I'm so glad to hear that some people are planning to share that with other groups. And I was wondering, Jackie Stiles, not to put you on the spot, but I know that you are working with school nurses, and I'm just wondering if this topic has come up, because I kept hearing things about kids going to nurses' offices to sleep, you know, not feeling well, perhaps because of staying up late on their phones. I just wonder if that's topic has kind of surfaced at all since you've been in your role. Oh, we can't hear you. It might be your headphones. Well, you could put, if you want to put some information in the chat. I didn't mean, sorry if you can't communicate. And, you know, hopefully we'll be able to hear from you at a future meeting. And anyone else that I know, like Valerie, you're a nurse that also, a public health nurse that supports school nurses, but also, you know, does home visiting, I believe, with new parents. And I just wonder if this is a topic that that is on your radar as well. While we're waiting for Valerie to unmute, if anyone else who isn't necessarily with a school or a district has any other comments, we have just a few more minutes before we'll turn it over to Jackie for some COI updates. So anyone else, be welcome to share.
I was just going to quickly recommend, if you haven't read the book, The Anxious Generation, it really goes into this topic, and it's more than just us saying, okay, you know, let's take the fun away. Like, it's a whole societal thing that needs to be addressed. But it's a great book to read. It's a great read.
I mean, that's a really good point, Heather. And the researcher for that book was the keynote speaker at the 2024 Live Well Advance. And we didn't even really like brush much of the surface of the social, emotional, and mental health aspects of being on social media. It was just, you know, our focus was a little more on just the screen time and ages and sleep and school, but it is all connected with that. Yeah.
And just like what people were saying, how kids don't want to feel left out, and parents don't want their kid to feel left out. And so it's you know, wow, it's a really big problem. So
I feel like it's the same with e-bikes. In my neighborhood, I've been seeing 4 and 5, 6 boys. It's all boys, but they're, you know, some of them seem to be as young as 8 or 9, and some maybe 11 or 12, and they're riding around in e-bikes. And luckily they have helmets on, but I also see a lot of kids on e-bikes without helmets. And you feel like, you know, if you're the parent of one of those friends and they're all on e-bikes, you know, you kind of feel like now your child needs an e-bike. But on that topic, and we won't go into it because I'm sure Lori could share a lot of information about that. But I put that down to like a policy thing. A manufacturer should not be allowed to sell small child-sized e-bikes that go over, you know, go an unsafe speed. because it is very hard for a parent to control what their child's doing when they're a mile away from home. But anyway, yes,
Yeah.
so
That's
we'll
what I
talk
put
about
in
that
the
another time, Lori.
Yeah, I put that in the chat too, that it's really helpful when schools just have a blanket policy at phones so that parents can just kind of say, like, okay, the school's the bad guy. I'm not the bad guy that's not letting you have the phone or like reduce your social media like usage time. It's you can just say, well, that's the policy and that's like the rule we have to follow. So leave your phone at home here and it'll be here when you get back.
All right. Well, thank you for a great discussion. A special thanks to our school friends who joined to give their perspectives. And, you all are on the front line seeing what the ramifications of, some of our societal trends are playing out in our young people. And we're now at a point where young people who grew up with phones in their hands are now having their own kids. And so I think that education, like Delphina said, is even more important because, some of these young people that this is all they know and they're not really aware of any other way to be. So this could be a real wake up call, is there can be a better way for their kids in the next generation. So thanks, everyone. And I'll turn it over to Jackie for some COI updates.
Yes, thank you, Deirdre. The first thing I wanted to update you guys about was our COI mini grant awardees, and we had 7 awardees this year, and 3 of them were schools. So we had Bancroft Elementary, who was awarded $3,000, and their project is strengthening student health with 3 different initiatives: Playworks, a run club, and creating a community garden. So they're really focusing on not only access to fresh, healthy food, but also physical education and being able to move your body in a safe way. Vista High School and with Vista Unified School District got $2,000. They are building off of other funding that they had to create this community room for students. So they're going to spruce up the room, provide healthy beverages and nutritious snacks in that room. They're going to buy new sports equipment for this lunch-free play. So just they're also doing great things that promote physical activity and promote nutritious food for their students. And then Escondido Union High School District, their CalSafe program works with pregnant and parenting teens that are also in high school. And so they are adding a school garden for their childcare site and doing gardening to just like spend time outdoors, planting, learning, taking home fruits and vegetables. So just 3 really great projects. We plan to do site visits with everyone too and take pictures and maybe do some like little interviews and social media reels over the next couple of months. So we will share those updates, but it's just really cool to see what the schools are doing and see them get funds.
Thank you, Jackie. And the COI mini grants, there were 7 total, but do you recall off the top of your head how many applications were received?
I forget. I think over 50 and like over $200,000 of funds requested.
Right, when the amount that was available to give was 40 something?
Something like that. And then we had extra funding from Kaiser Permanente Hospital Foundation, which provided 3 $10,000 each mini grants that focused specifically on lactation support and access to human milk and breastfeeding and chest feeding.
Yeah, great projects. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about, especially the school ones.
Yeah. Yep. And then those are basically all my updates. I think I just wanted to remind you guys.
Oh, and they'll be doing mini grants next year as well.
Yes,
So,
exactly. We'll be
and
doing mini grants next year and the following year.
and the application comes out generally in
Yeah, I think it came out in June.
Which we know isn't a great time for schools, but it has to do with like the whole cadence of the year and when things
Yes.
need to happen with, and
But
so
this
but
time,
a lot of schools did apply.
Yes, a lot of schools did apply, and this was our first time doing mini grants in a while. And so now we have like the application, we know the questions, we know how to get our committee together for reviewing applications. So there is a chance we could roll it out early because we kind of have the system. We just have to copy and paste for the next couple years.
So it would still be due in July, but you could maybe let schools
Let
or everyone know
questions
about it
go out
before school
early.
goes goes for summer. That's great.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're trying to make it a little easier.
Yeah,
And finding more funding for more grants, because obviously the need is out there.
that's right. Yep, there was so many applications. And then also just wanted to remind you guys that there's no meeting in December. So our next one will be January 20th.
Hope everyone has a wonderful holiday time, and we're all just emails and phone numbers away. So please feel free to keep in touch, and you'll be getting meeting notes with the presentation and the resources
Yep.
before long. So thank you so much for that support, Jackie, and thank you to our interpreter as well, Louisa, if she's still here. Yes, Louisa, there you are. Yeah, so thank you very much
Yes, I'm
for
still
all the
here.
members
Thank
of
you
the
for
different
having
work
me.
groups. Oh, thank you. All the different work groups and community council and schools and school districts and community partners that were able to attend.
Yep.